Is that better?
That's off, and now you have the top, so you're good.
Okay, sounds good. Well, welcome everyone. Good morning and welcome to the morning workshop for the whole child approach to the expanded learning opportunities AB 86 grant convening. We're very happy to have you here. And this workshop is COVID safe schools before, during, and after school, braiding together promising practices of school and expanded learning to support the health and well-being of all. Okay, so we are going to first start with a poll. We would like to poll who is here today. What is your role in expanded learning? And also what brings you here today? So if you can take a moment, if you have any questions about the poll, if maybe this is your first time, we're here to help. And so if you have any questions, please post those in the chat. But again, it's just a 2-question poll. What is your role in expanded learning? And what brings you here today? And we have some responses coming in. Thank you, everyone. We have program directors, after school program coordinators, other. If you marked other, if you can add a comment in the chat. Ginger, did you have a comment?
Oh, I was just going to say the same thing. So we have some folks saying other. We're curious to know who's here, so that as we move through the presentation, we make sure that we're connecting and making it relevant for you. So it would be great to know what your role is in expanded learning.
Thank you. And we have some folks looking to modify their existing program and not sure yet, and that's totally okay. Hopefully you will hear content today that will spark an idea or a thought that might help in either starting a program or modifying an existing program, or even just strengthening the relationship between the school day and an expanded learning or out of school time program.
I love seeing TOSA after school. We have that position here. We call them teacher liaisons. So thank you for that in the chat. It looks like we have a few of them. So I'm going to end the poll. And I'll actually share the results so you guys can see sort of who's in the room today. So what you see is we've got some program directors, after school program coordinator. It looks like one from a school site. That's awesome. And then a lot of people here are looking to modify a program, or they're quite not sure yet what is happening for them, probably with this large windfall of funding that's coming into their school districts. Melissa, I actually am going to suggest that I share my screen. I have 2 screens open, and you have a poll on yours. So let me get to the slide. My name is Ginger Shea. Am I sharing my screen now? Not yet. Yes, here we go. My name is Ginger Shea. I am the Director of Enrichment and Special Programs for Oxnard School District. And I'm here with my partner today. I'll let you introduce yourself.
My name is Melissa Perez. I am a program specialist with the California After School Network. And I also have 15+ years as a district manager of our ACES expanded learning program.
Well, while you mention your experience, I'm afraid to admit how old I am. My background is, the poll is closed, correct? You guys aren't still staring at the poll? Melissa?
No, you're good, Ginger.
Okay. I don't see the poll on the screen.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, got a message. So my background is 10 years in education as a teacher, and then I moved over into school administration, and my first administrative job was to manage the ACES grant for Oxnard School District. And I have been doing this for about 12 years within our school district here. So my educational background is from a certificated side, and Melissa, I believe you are from a classified side.
Correct.
Okay, so I will move forward. We were going to do a connectivity and grounding exercise, but I know they did that in the keynote. So I will share this with you as something that you can do with your organization. I hope you don't mind my changing things up here. We just did this in the keynote. This is just a simple grounding and breathing activity to refocus and recenter everybody when you do a training. It's a practice that throughout the field of after school, I think as you heard Michael Funk mention in the keynote, that we take the time to center ourselves. So 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. Taking the time and the moment to think about these actually helps take your mind off of everything else, because you have to concentrate on these finding these numerical items. Today, we are going to talk about design or redesign of an expanded learning space. COVID has thrown us some curveballs, and we have this extra money that's coming in where several programs in the state are looking to either open a program or change or add to a program that they have in place. We're going to talk about that through the lens of safety and school safety plans, along with COVID-19 considerations, looking at the quality standards and expanded learning for building a safe and supportive environment, checking in on the health and well-being of all. I think we've noticed that there's a high level of anxiety as everybody's returning to in-person. And then we want to talk about the people and the systems involved in supporting the program, and things for you to think about that maybe you haven't thought about before. So our goal is to get you some promising practices to strengthen the relationship between the school day and your expanded learning environment. And I don't know how many of you were able to hang on to listen to Ms. Pittman's speech, but the idea was to really integrate and intertwine what makes after school fun into the school day, and what makes the school day great into the after school, and building that partnership so that there's no more finite line, that it's just kind of, we work together. Is this me, Melissa?
That's you. If you also want, I just added the link in the chat of the note stock.
Thank you. So we are looking at creating safe and supportive environments, and we want to challenge each of you to think about what are all of the routines and rituals of after school, and what do those look like with the added filter of COVID-19 measures. There are some significant things that need to be changed, and some significant things that we do really well that the school day has benefited from. What program practices and policies might you need to change? How do you prepare for the health, safety, and social, emotional well-being of everybody? And then how do you prepare for kind of the unknown? We don't know necessarily how things are all going to play out. Some of you may have opened programs already. Some of you may still be operating virtually. How might you redesign or rethink your program? We talk in after school a lot about social and emotional learning, and what I'm sharing with you here is the framework from CASEL, basically putting a child at the center and focusing on self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and awareness. And knowing that a lot of our kids have been isolated as they've gone through the school year at home, and they're now working to rebuild relationships and that social and emotional connection.
Okay, so thank you, Ginger, for setting the tone and our time for today. We are going to make this as interactive as possible. And so we are going to add all of you into a breakout room. And we will be posting these reflection questions in the chat in a moment, but we would like you to connect or meet maybe perhaps some new colleagues and make some connections and have a discussion about what are you thinking about when we first open up the workshop in terms of safe schools before, after school, during school. What would you like to gain from today's session? Maybe other districts are doing something that you might want to learn more about, and so you might ask that question, or what are some common or recurring things among the group. And so this is just some time to get to know each other and connect and start building connections. And so I'm going to go ahead and open up the rooms. This will be a 10-minute activity, and we will give you a 1-minute warning when we will be closing the rooms and welcoming everyone back to the main room. So
we have 2 links for you posted in the chat. One is a link to a Google Doc. Julie, could you share that again, please? Oh, there it is. So there's questions, and we've included the questions on each one of the pages. So when you go into a breakout room, find the sheet, sorry, the slide with your room number on it, and you can make some comments there. I'm going to open all rooms.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to 1. I don't know if you want to pop in anywhere. Julie,
I think I'll stay out in case we have any attendees join, and I can add them into a breakout room.
Okay.
Our recording has unpaused. Welcome back, everyone.
We have a couple more minutes before everybody comes back.
Have them 3 or 4 feet space.
Welcome back, everyone.
You know, I have to say, Melissa, this feels really good to be in a room talking with other people focused on expanded learning. You know, so many of us have had been stuck in our own district or program trying to figure things out, getting our feet on the ground, listening to what everybody's talking about out there. I feel ya. So thank you guys. And I need to double check that I still have my sound shared.
All right.
Would you like to introduce that?
Sure. Thank you, Ginger. So for those of you that you might know about our quality standards, our California quality standards for California expanded learning programs, and for those that may not know, we'll be posting a link to where to access the California expanded learning quality standards. And these are just that. These are standards that expanded learning programs use to create spaces that are high quality for young people. And they are divided into different focus areas with point of service focus. And each standard provides information in how to meet that standard and what programs might be able to offer. And again, we know not every program is the same. And so we use these as a vehicle to help our programs engage in that continuous quality improvement to continue to be high quality. So this particular quality standard, safe and supportive environment, we are going to share as a little bit of the foundation and the background of why we feel it's important, our partnerships and the braiding of the work to engage and create these positive spaces, these safe and supportive spaces for young people. So we will, excuse me, share this video in a moment. And
so,
yes,
Ms. Prater or Julie, could you please post the quality standards? They should be listed on slide 9. It's the second link that's there. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to press play after I share my screen and share sound.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Safe and supportive environment.
I think it's important for kids to feel safe in their after-school programs because they spent just half as much time that they do in school here. They need to feel comfortable and like they're welcomed here. And the feeling of safety is always a feeling of comfort.
I've received training in bloodborne pathogens, training in mandated reporter, also training in emergency drills such as earthquake drills and fire drills and lockdown drills. All of that contributes to creating a safe environment.
But we're also extremely concerned with emotional safety. So when we have professional development every single time, and we have them every other month and daily at each site, we make sure that there is a specific focus on emotional safety for students. So how do you react to these circumstances? We go as far to trying to identify different scenarios students may be facing at home. And so one of the things that we always tell the program leaders is to create a safe environment. We don't judge the student or the activity or their action, because you never know what they're going through at home. It may be something that they see at home and that's their normal. Instead, it's a conversation of, hey, when we're at school, we don't do that, and this is what we do instead. And if we hope that hopefully as we start to frame that for them and help them make that distinguishment, that things will be better and they'll have that active skill.
I would even take it further and say it's a safe place because he knows he belongs here and that he can talk to the people here. And if there were anything going on or he didn't feel comfortable about something, he knows that his instructors care and they want to know what's going on.
If there's something going wrong with your day and you are feeling down, you have so many friends and even the staff are asking you what's wrong, what can we do to help you, and they try everything they can to make you feel better.
Bucket filling is a concept where every person has an invisible bucket, and in that bucket holds our good thoughts and good feelings. So every time we interact positively with someone, it fills our bucket. And so we teach the students here that we want to be bucket fillers. So we want to fill everybody's bucket, and we have different ways that we fill buckets. I mean, some of them could be as simple as smiling and saying hello to someone, and other ways that you can fill buckets is perhaps that you help somebody do something, you help with homework, you help if they need to carry something. There's just several different ways that they can do it.
And you know, it's that environment, bringing it up to all of them. It helps them with social skills amongst each other, because it's important to feel safe not just with your immediate home, but where you're spending your time, your social time and your growing time. Because they do grow at home, but they're growing here too. For instance, I have a kid who had a really hard time reading. And during reading time, he did come up to me and he said, Miss Nayeli, I don't know how to read. Slowly but surely we're making it through. And I think it's important for them to feel security with us, because it helps them in the long run too.
The many adults I have around me, it's no possible way you can't feel safe. I'm around all the people I know. I'm not around strangers at all. Everybody makes me feel safe. This whole school does.
Through the implementation of the Safe and Supportive Environment Standard, students are provided supports for their developmental, social, emotional, and physical needs, leading to a sense of community and belonging. The quality standards are a guide to help you lead your program to its highest quality. Your work in expanded learning is essential to helping young people thrive.
Well, there we go. I think that's the first time that I've transitioned from a video back to the slide I needed to without having to restart a presentation. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the quality standards, but the quality standards are really a great way to frame conversations in your program. I want to say last year our program was working on youth voice and leadership, and that went away completely in a moment. And we also realized that we shut school down so quickly, kids didn't have that opportunity to exchange information so they could even talk outside of school. And so our program staff made a quick shift and decided that they were going to really focus on providing a safe and supportive environment for kids. And that ended up being online, running a virtual program. Melissa, take it away.
Okay, great. So the purpose of our time together is to engage in conversations and share some of these promising practices that help build the health and well-being of all. And when we say all, we are considering all of our stakeholders and the environment. And so as we engage in this conversation in the next few slides about our safe and supportive environment, we are considering our stakeholders of our students, our staff, our facilities, in terms of the environment, the physical environment, right? Our teachers and school staff, community members, and others. So we will engage in a few conversations and share some promising practices that Ginger and I have both led our programs to either connect virtually with students and communities, or create these in-person spaces during COVID, which was a completely different time, right, that we've never experienced. So next slide, please.
And as part of our objectives, we did say we were going to talk through each of these roles. And very pointedly, as we've talked about returning to school and we've talked about working with our students, we've really had to navigate the staff that work in our after-school program with working with teachers and being in the classroom teacher space. So it's really important to really thoughtfully think about each of your stakeholders that contribute to your program and to or that interact or around it. When we talk about the health and well-being of students, we want to really focus and go through what is it like for the kids? What has their experience been? Maybe put together some safety videos, an orientation for families. Where are we doing a wellness check-in? Are we doing a wellness check-in? How are you going to manage materials and supplies? Like, are they in individual boxes? Are they labeled by kid? How do you mitigate sharing things? How do you arrange the furniture? And, you know, a lot of times in after school, we work collaboratively. So we're looking to pull kids in desks and centers together. How is that going to work? When you look at the social and emotional needs, a daily check-in, and I mean, with everybody, the kids, the staff, the site, all of that. How are you being intentional in supporting the social and emotional learning of the students? What does your schedule look like? Does it allow that sort of flexibility for you to stop and just, build emotional skills before you move on? When you navigate through, you've got to think about what your staff professional development looks like when they're returning to the school site. Something that I was not prepared for in getting my staff ready to return to the school site was dealing with other people's anxiety. A lot of times they're used to dealing with an angry parent or somebody who's upset about this, that, or the other, or kids that aren't getting along in the program. But a lot of people have now developed an overwhelming level of anxiety about people entering their personal space or being around other people. And we've had to have some intentional conversations with our staff about how to listen and step back and just let how do you de-escalate that anxiety for somebody. Along with that, emotional safety, building in some supports for our staff that feel like they're a little bit in the fray. Having to work through other people's anxiety has made them feel a little more uncomfortable and not necessarily at ease within the program. So building team building activities and finding ways to do that so that they work effectively together.
And additional items in terms of staff PD, these are topics to also consider. And again, this is from the lens of working in a school district. However, I worked with the school district where we also partnered with our community partners and offered our in-person programming. So it was important that I advocated for our community partners to be a part of this PD. So that way they are providing equitable opportunities for all of the students in our community, especially considering they were part of our grant. And so these are the topics that we considered in terms of our PD for our team staff. And so we connected with our student support services who worked, our nurses worked directly with our program staff to go over, especially with COVID, what are some of the health related items that we should be stay aware of, and especially if there's symptoms, that we are also following our risk management procedures in terms of if there is potentially exposure to COVID, what are the procedures that the district has in place that we should be following. In addition to that, we also worked with our risk management department to ensure that all of our team, to lessen their anxiety levels, made sure that they knew where to access PPE on school sites, to engage in communication with the school office staff or administrators, so that way they had access to that. And also just the general health and wellness procedures that the school day was following, that our team after school, or before and after school, were also following those pieces. We also provided training for our team staff in our sign in and out procedures, because again, we had to figure out, right, like what is going to work for our parent community, knowing our community and how, what supports they might need, how we can redesign our sign in and out system. So that way our students, the health and well-being of our students is the priority in addition to the parents. Other topics to consider are transitioning of students, especially with the social distancing aspects and cohorts, and not commingling of cohorts and whatnot, and being in shared spaces. So what might that look like in terms of groups when we're waiting? What are things that we can be doing, activities that students can do independently, but still in somewhat of a group? So there is still some of that social emotional piece. And then also, what are some of the job functions for the teams, right? Because some of those might have changed a bit. And so how are they providing supervision to students in some of the shared spaces? What might that look like? A big key area that our team it seemed very concerned about, but once we went over this, I think the anxiety level kind of decreased a little, was the addressing the program schedule. How is the program schedule going to run with different school hours? How might this impact the start and end times of our expanded learning programs, and a schedule that the students follow, but then also the schedule for the team behind the scenes. Like, what are they doing? What time are they cleaning and sanitizing the shared spaces, or the supplies and materials and whatnot? And then that brings me to the last topic, materials and supplies, how we were making those accessible for the team and also for the students, but to make sure that they were safe and ready for use. So we had to really think outside of the box and engage in conversation with our entire team. And what do you think might work for us during this time? What are some of the cleaning aspects that we should be looking at? And so having this time with all of the team and really investing in that time to develop these new skills or strengthen these skills, or even think outside of the box, are areas that I think are very important to include if you are considering professional development for your team staff.
And you know, Melissa, one of the things I think we didn't necessarily talk about as we were planning this, and I realize from my own experience in the program we have, each of our after school program leads was sort of content specific, meaning I had an art specialist and I had all 5 of our student groups rotating through with this art specialist, which then means that in terms of COVID, we've now got a room that's contaminated with 5 different groups. And if we had an issue, we might need to shut down. And of course, things have changed with contact tracing and needing to sort of roll things back. But we had to completely redesign and retrain our staff with the activities that they do with the students. So we needed to train one person to do the art program, and that same one person to do our sports and PE, and that same one person to do math and literacy and any of the other enrichment activities that we brought into our program. So for us, it was a complete redesign of our program. And I will say that as a post-COVID strategy, we have really appreciated it. We've had a lot of staff stay around and stay with us. And because they were able to work with the grade that their heart was with. So we have a first grade specialist instead of an art specialist. And that was really one of the biggest changes to our program of how we needed to change our training and the activities.
Thank you, Ginger. That is a great point. And it really is a redesign of so many elements of our program that we sometimes might overlook. Another key piece, right, is making sure that all of our handbooks were updated and included an addendum of some sort to include the policies and procedures and next steps for our staff. So aside from our staff handbook, we also provided a COVID addendum to our parent handbook, and also for our school administrators and office staff. This is giving them an update of this is how our program will operate on site. So in terms of the staff handbook, we provided time to review this together as a team. It included specific program elements. It included health and safety, how our communication with our community and our community engagement. And also it included topics of professional relationships and learning, which included training and, you know, all the PD that we just spoke of. It also included who to ask for support, because again, we're operating during a time that we've never had to operate before. And so some may not know who to go to or where to go to. And so, and realizing that that is a great question, right? Like, who do I ask for support in such areas? And so we made sure that we went over potential scenarios and learn from, well, I might do this during this time, or I might seek support from this person. And then also, because this was a big concern, was reiterating our process to request COVID-19 materials and who to go to when we need more, if there's a shortage, who to contact, and to do our best that we are, you know, being proactive and thinking proactively and not waiting till we're completely out of something. But, you know, when we're running low, who do we need to connect with? Because we wanted to make sure that all of our team felt heard and supported and felt safe working in person with our students.
Absolutely. You know, Michael Funk in one of the fireside chats discussed the fact that the PPE that was shared by the state to the school districts was also to include the expanded learning programs operating within the school districts. And I realized that Melissa and I are talking a lot from a school district perspective. You know, if you have a CBO or you know, you have a clubhouse or some off-site location that you're thinking of things differently or we should discuss, please feel free to unmute yourself and chime in, or to post it in the chat. I will move forward. This is great. I'm excited.
So I mentioned earlier that we provided a parent handbook. And so these are some items that we included. And again, this wasn't like a 20-page handbook. This was short and sweet to help parents understand that we were thinking of using a solution-based mindset and thinking of the best to provide needs and supports to our students and parents and our community. So we provided parent orientations for parents to engage in. We offered them in English and Spanish at different times throughout 1 week, different parts of the day to accommodate the different schedules of working families. And in these orientations, we discussed our measures for COVID safety and the health and wellness pieces, such as wellness checks of students and staff when they arrived on campus or when they were checking into our program. We also covered student expectations in terms of, you know, following those health and safety guidelines to ensure that we're providing a safe environment for all. We also included parent guardian community agreements. Again, this is to help, you know, use a proactive lens in stating these are the expectations and what we would like to see out of our parent and guardian community. And we also covered our attendance, which covered our sign out system. We had to create a whole different sign out process. We had to use a touchless sign out system, which I know a lot of other before and after school programs created their own touchless sign out process. So it was really each site coordinator who works at a school site, regardless if they're a community partner or a district site, everyone received the same training and support from our district as a grantee. And so we created really, what is the word I'm looking for? Comprehensive sign-out systems that were, everything was offered in both languages for families. It provided steps in how to download an app, to scan our QR code for parents and whatnot. So again, I know I'm getting a little too detail specific, but knowing our community is very important.
I think that's what people want to hear. You know, I'm hearing you say you use the QR code for people to come in and teach. What really is an essential part of that is getting the families to download and support them with the technology of putting it on their device, and then how do they use it. And so we've had to create how-to videos for that. And I also want to underscore the point of the parent orientations, because in the past, our parent orientations have gone over, this is what our program is, this is what we do, these are the expectations for students. When we go on a field trip, this is what, you know, this is how we roll. And now all of a sudden we're having to do a parent orientation almost to put parents' minds at ease about our own COVID safety protocols. So here you go. This is how we are keeping your child safe in our program, how we're cleaning, how we're moving through all of this, which is by circumstance lowering their anxiety.
Right. Absolutely. And also when we provided all of these, last thing I just want before we move on to the next slide is we felt it was extremely important that our parents' voice was heard and they had an opportunity to express themselves and, you know, give us their thoughts and their feedback. And it also, you know, the SEL piece is so heavy and critical for the work that we do with our students, but also with our families. And so reestablishing those relationships that kind of paused throughout this, you know, COVID time, and reconnecting with their families and identifying some of them needed to be connected with local community resources and whatnot. And we were happy to do that. But again, pausing when we offer these orientations to reconnect with parents and families. So that way we were also providing them with resources to support, again, the whole child, the whole family as best as we could. So just wanted to add that last key point there.
I apologize. I feel like I've skipped a slide here. 14, 15, 16.
We're there we are, and it's all you, Ginger.
Okay. So we want to, you know, our school district has had some requirements and guidelines, and we contract our program out to a community agency. And so we've had to be very intentional about how our school staff and our after-school staff work, and then what's the status with volunteers? Are we allowing them? Are we not allowing them? Do we rely on them? Part of our staff recruitment pipeline relies on the volunteers from the local high school coming in to work with our students out of what they have as a teacher education career academy. And I'm not allowed to have them come on campus anymore. So how do we reinvent and recreate that? So really, as you're thinking about your program or designing or redesigning a program, what does it look like with your teachers and your program using classrooms that your teachers are teaching in, or how your teachers are being able to interact or interface with the after-school program staff? What kinds of pieces of information need to be shared? I mean, if we have care rooms on our campuses, how does the program get information about that? So really, as you think programmatically, think about teachers and shared classroom space. You know, the other thing that's come up for me is when you talked earlier, Melissa, about meeting spaces. Our whole program at the end of the day is sent to the cafeteria, right? So you have 100 kids in the cafeteria. We can't do that anymore. So that's got to look different. Having conversations with your custodians about cleaning schedules and supports, and what they need and what you need in order to run your program most effectively. Talking with child nutrition services, an added layer that we have as we're looking at our kids returning and running at the program is that we've had this community feeding program where families are coming to the school to pick up meals. So how do we run our program on campus with the awareness that the community and public is coming in? In the case where the meals are shelf-stabled or pre-prepared, or they're actual hot meals, how are we handling food now and being safe with, we're wearing gloves, we've got, a mask and a shield on as we're working to deliver the food to the students. And what does the kitchen use look like? Most of our kitchens are tied to our cafeterias. And, I would imagine in some of the other spaces where you're either having food delivered or brought in, what does that look like? So things to think about. Need to really consider anyone that uses the school, which I think is going to lead into our conversation a little bit later about facilities, because anyone that comes in to use the school, you've got to know how exactly that fits into your program now, and in terms of program safety in general, but also what does that mean when you're running your program? Maybe you have a community agency running parent classes. How does that work together? And then, our district is looking at developing a COVID volunteer policy, which, at this point, we're talking about if they are able to show that they're vaccinated, or, however, we're talking about all the different ways that we can start returning to normal, but ensuring the best safety of our students. If you are a program that operates on campus or off campus, but you're picking kids up and taking them over, you may want to know what the volunteer policy is of the district as it relates to COVID. Really, you want to know the volunteer policy, period, but you want to know how that's changed as a result of COVID. School administrators, that's me. If you are a school administrator and you're attending, you want to make sure to be able to be accommodating. The level of anxiety that we have seen between a teacher allowing an after-school program staff to use their classroom and Zoom from that space with students. I don't want to have a stranger in my classroom. I want to have everything there. Now, we've used classrooms for all the years that our programs have been here, and now all of a sudden we have sort of this backwards stepping of losing ground of being in a classroom. So now, in some cases, they're moving us to the library, the cafeteria, maybe the staff lounge for us to run our programs. And I would encourage after-school programs to sort of stay the course and try and be persistent to keep the classroom spaces. But school administrators can support by providing enough space, supporting the stability of the program, really pull this team in, the staff in, and mentor them. We are losing staff right and left. We can't hire as many staff as we need. And if we're talking about coming back in person next year, I am nervous for the number of staff we need in order to run our program, because our staff, even though we have paid them and they have continued to work through this entire time, they've been going and finding full-time jobs because other people have, all of the changes in our economy and our environment have just made it really difficult to hire enough staff in. Couple that with the increase in minimum wage, catching up with what we're paying after-school program staff to work with students, sort of a hot mess. So school administrators can help advocate and get involved. I'm sure that over the next few years, there's going to be a push to increase the minimum rate for ACES. But right now with these AB 86 funds, if you're looking to add additional seats in your after-school program because you have the money to do it, or to start a program, you're going to need to know where to recruit. And if you as a site administrator have a relationship with some young adults, that's going to be the best way that you can grab them. Site devices, where are your after-school program staff using your Prometheans or your touch screens or your computers or all of the above, the radios of communication? How do all of those things work? Are we wiping down radios and handing those between people? However that comes to play. Share your contact information for after hours, because if there's an emergency that comes up, the after school program definitely needs to be able to call you and say help. In our situation, 9 times out of 10, the principal knows the parent, and the principal knows the parent and knows how to work with and communicate with them effectively. And then there's a team effort that's all included there. And again, I will say, I think this is the third time, advocacy, advocacy, advocacy.
Ginger,
yes.
Sorry, if I can just add one last comment to
Yes.
the last slide that you were on administrators in terms of the communication. The communication with the school administrator and also the office staff or the nursing staff, it was also very critical, especially when we reopened, when there were those moments of contact tracing and identifying students who were maybe in the school day that were or staff employees that were sent home who might have been exposed in a particular shared space. And I don't mention this to scare anyone, but again, not having that contact information just adds another layer of possible confusion, or it can add to being proactive, right? And better connecting with those that are after school, and also vice versa. So just wanted to add that.
And you bring up some really great ideas. I would also say the custodian. You know, most schools have a day custodian and a night custodial team that comes in. And I would say, just from a point of safety, the after school program, if they are operating on site, if they are operating on a school site, they definitely want to know how to get a hold of the custodian, whether it's their cell phone number, whether it's a shared radio, because if anything goes on after school, they're going to want that. And then there's the added partnership with the custodian. If you've got a good relationship with them, that really helps. Absolutely. Custodial teams are our family. The care rooms that schools have might be another thing that you need to consider, and that's also part of the facilities. So the care room, in case that lingo is specific to my district, is the room where if we have a child who's showing suspected COVID symptoms, that's where they are sent. And so you need to think about, yes, wellness rooms. You need to think about what's the supervision, what's how to, you know, what happens when there is a child that starts to show symptoms during the after school program, and how do you address that? So that's a huge partnership with the school day and the site administration. And it's also a big impact with facilities and knowing what rooms you have access to, where you have the keys, all of that information. And Melissa, I will let you go.
Thank you. So in terms of facilities use, and again, we use the term facilities because we're looking at the structural pieces of our shared spaces. And so we may need different or additional spaces, right? Especially with the different cohort and size, especially with keeping in mind of the 6 feet social distancing. If you're interested, if any of our attendees here are looking to start new programs, you may need to protect or reserve spaces for our programs. For example, some school districts protect the spaces on campuses before they open to some of our outside community partners for such activities as maybe sports or community sports and whatnot. And so making sure that we're doing our best to have that extra layer of safety in making sure that the spaces that we are using and that we're accessing have been cleaned and sanitized and are safe for our students and our team staff to enter. Classroom use agreements, or we used to, in my past district, we referred to them as shared space agreements. And they were shared with the teacher and also maybe some of the paraeducators that work during the school day. And we all connected with this classroom use agreement or shared space agreement, identifying what are some spaces that we might not need to access, or also creating some sort of informal system or communication system with the school day and or before and after school program to determine when the space is closed for sanitizing, and then when it's open for use and safe for use. And then also indicating spaces where we might be able to hold some of our supplies and materials. Again, we want to make sure that items are safe for student use and whatnot. So doing our best to support our teams and having those readily available when they need them. Custodial schedules were incredibly important in working together and building those relationships, so that way we all knew what times certain classrooms or shared spaces were going to be cleaned and sanitized, when we might be able to go into those. And then also, you know, in the world of expanded learning or after school, we always have to resort to that plan B, C, or D. Anytime there might be a moment, maybe there's some sort of community activity and police activity, and we need to enter into a space in an emergency. So knowing what those schedules are and staying updated on any new updates that are events that are happening on campus are incredibly important. And then also the rotations, rotations of entering into some of the shared spaces. And then I think, Ginger, if you want to speak on the rotations of some of the enrichment rotations that were offered with your team. I think you brought that up earlier.
Sorry, I was grabbing the link for the next slide and
oh, it's okay.
So, you know, our staff, in terms of rotations, we don't rotate anymore. And then as the guidelines are opening and flexing, I think we have to be very thoughtful of, when we bring someone in for that extra enrichment activity, how many students we're going to have that individual be around, and how do we keep track of that, and how do we document that. I do also want to say on facilities use, neither Melissa and I run a before school program, and I think that that's something that at least for me now, with this funding that's coming through, will be new. I think we have about 5 schools that we're going to look at before school programming. And so that's also reserving the space in the morning and knowing where kids are going to be, because they can't necessarily be in a teacher's classroom when they're coming in to set up for the day. But also, as a general rule, I've worked with our facilities department to block off our campuses from community use until after 5:30. So we have our kids on campus and they're safe. And, you know, right around 5:30 is when we start dismissing kids to their families. So we have an agreement that if we have a soccer league that wants to use our campuses, the permit doesn't get approved before 5:30 p.m. Because we're using the facilities for our students. Next slide.
Thank you, Ginger.
Yeah, you know, I bring up soccer and shared facilities. Our programs do run sports with our students, and they need transportation. And so this is where this slide came up, and we were like, oh yeah, what about transportation? We've had no transportation taking place during this time, except for our students with disabilities or for our students that are in like our newcomer academy. So if you're looking at a program and you have a bus that takes your kids home as a late bus, or they rely on transportation provided by the district, that that you think thoughtfully about this. Where are the kids getting picked up if it's coming in for the morning program? Where are the kids being getting on the bus in the afternoon? How many students can be on the bus? What's the capacity? How are they seated? Clear communication with families about pickup and drop-off times. I actually collected a bunch of data from a district as I was doing my dissertation about their summer program. And the number one issue for families was there wasn't enough good communication about transportation. And that was pre-COVID. So now that we're post-COVID and we have limited capacity, do our kids have to have a bus pass? Are bus drivers going to be health screening kids before they get on? And you know, in our district, we are not. It's not a recommendation from our local government. But if you have to consider that, then are they getting their temperatures taken before they get on the bus to go home? Do you need to add additional buses? Like, do you need to request, because you can only ride 50% capacity, do you need 2 buses now to replace the one that you've used in the past? I have one school that's used 2 buses every year, and I have a feeling this year we're going to need at least 4 or 5 just to keep some social distancing and follow the guidelines that we've been given. Also, how does it look for sports and field trips? You know, how many team members can go? How many adults are you going to allow to ride on the bus with the students? Are your parents allowed to ride the bus? Are volunteers Are you going to put your sports team and your cheer team and everything else on the bus? How does that all come to play? So transportation, I would highly recommend that you consider all angles of it and plan ahead. We are now going to give you guys an opportunity to go into the breakout rooms. Before we do that, Julie, thank you for putting the link into the chat. There's the Google Sheet, which is the same Google Slide. There's a Google Slide deck that was shared with you. We're going to use the same Google Slide for you guys to put some comments and feedback and to have a deeper conversation about some of the ideas and systems that we've spoken about. We're going to give you about 10 minutes in that breakout room to connect with each other. Before we do that, though, are there any questions? Everybody's so quiet. We appreciate you being here. Okay, so I'm going to open the breakout rooms for you guys to.
Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had meaningful team time and some discussion. Sounds like we have a lot of great questions, and so we're excited to hear some of those questions at
Gave
the
medication in our wellness check.
towards the end of our time together. So thank you.
Do you know what is encouraging to me, or I love that everybody's sharing ideas, because I think we ended the session and people were still talking and we can hear them as they're coming back into the session here. I think it's really great as I moved through the rooms, everybody's got some really great things they're sharing, some definite things to consider. And I want to just double check really quick before we move on. Am I sharing my screen?
Yes, you are sharing your screen.
Great. Here you go.
Thank you. So we understand there are many questions, and we are excited to have some Q&A time when we get through the next few slides. So I'm going to continue here with the health and well-being focus here, and some other consideration points that Ginger and I thought about, like, oh, what about this, as we were building our presentation. So considerations for a before school program. Additional communication systems that were great practices to have during a reopening phase for our communities. Also talking about social emotional learning and PBIS and how those pieces can support the work that we are doing to support young people and their families and students. And then also talking about the school safety plan, and then advocacy and expansion, right? And ways that we can all support each other in those efforts.
Those of you who, I'm sorry, I'm going to pause to say, those of you who are not part of, like you're from a community-based organization and you partner with a school district, I want to take a minute to make sure that you are all aware that every school and school district has to have a comprehensive school safety plan that they update on an ongoing basis. And if you are running programs on a school campus, you should be written into that safety plan. And if you're not, I'm happy to stick around and point you in the right direction of where to locate that for your individual school district. But that is where all of the COVID protocols are getting written. And if you are an outside agency, even though you're an outside agency, you're still on the school campus and you should be part of that plan.
Thank you, Ginger. Great point. So considerations for a before school program. We are going to talk about this briefly in two different areas. So one, in terms of the physical space, because again, as you might be operating a before school program, there are pieces that you might need to open on your as a program, because you might be the first individuals or personnel or staff on a campus. So again, the coordination with the custodial team and school admin and staff are incredibly important. Making sure that there are identified welcome locations where you are welcoming students and families as they sign in to drop off their child for a before school program. And then also identifying the check-in stations for the staff, right? Like if they have to go through a wellness check or whatnot, where might they be going, especially if it's not at a regular morning time where your regular team staff who work during the day might be entering certain welcome locations. Also identifying the shared spaces that might be available. Have they been cleaned yet? Especially if the custodial team's day starts at maybe 6:30 in the morning and maybe your before school program starts around that time, right? So what areas have been sanitized, and creating a schedule, as we mentioned before in some of the other slides, is really key in terms of that ongoing communication and knowing what this cleaning schedule is, what spaces are available and whatnot. Also, thinking about breakfast. Some of our programs offer a breakfast program. So where might students be eating? What time will they be eating? Where are they eating indoors or outdoors? Are we serving through the cafeteria, right? Again, all of those, as Ginger spoke a few moments ago about the nutrition services portion of a program, how are we also embedding those policies and procedures into a before school program? And as I mentioned, where will students meet? Where do they then transition to next? Where do they get dismissed to, right? So again, we have to be mindful that as we create or recreate and redesign these programs, we cannot assume things are just going to go back to normal. We have to be able to think outside of the box and identify these other ways of offering programming for our communities. And something that our program, my past district role, we didn't offer a before school program. We were an ACES after school program only. However, our department also offered a before school program. And one thing that was very beneficial was the teams work together. So a lot of the closing team staff for the day before, so say it's Tuesday, 5:30, they're prepping and setting up materials for the morning team who open the next day. So that way the morning team are not having to rush and sanitize items and set up items. It's definitely a team and a partnership in supporting the students. So that way at whatever time of day, they're either in a shared space before or after school, that they have these, the environments are set up and welcoming and ready to go. So those are, and then these are additional considerations for a before school program. And Ginger, I believe that's you.
Yeah, so the opportunity to do something before school starts is really awesome. So our schools start based on zones because our transportation delivers kids to the first zone, then delivers kids to the second zone, and then delivers to the third zone. Well, our third zone starts the latest, and for our families, they're dropping their kids off at 7 and school doesn't start until 8:30. And I think the opportunity right now with this AB 86 funding to start a before school program is really great. We have the kids showing up already. So what can we do to maximize the opportunity for these kids? And so you can think about social and emotional activities. You can think about bringing enrichment in before school. And then you can look at academic. We have some interventions that are computer based, and we can get the kids on the computers and moving through, and then find some systems of reward. My biggest selling point to get my district to take a second look at this is that that's 180 extra hours of learning time. If that's 1 hour a day times the whole school year, that's a lot of extra learning time for kids. So just want to point that out. And then communication systems. And Melissa, I know we're starting to get near the end.
Yeah, I would be happy to just float through these really quick so we can have some time with our team. What do you think about that?
That sounds great.
Okay, so you have the resources here for some of these communication systems. Again, the team cannot work without having strong, effective, ongoing communication. So you see these resources here. Having daily check-ins and using the site devices to support the work throughout the day is very important.
Spending time to support the social emotional learning and PBIS of the school sites and extending that into the out of school time environment is really helpful and useful. I take advantage of using our school counselors to work with kids and to do circles with kids after school. So thinking about things differently. The safety plan, where are we at here? I think this is both of us. So really give some consideration to your comprehensive school safety plan, but also make sure that your program can figure out how to run drills with their students in a safe and healthy fashion. And really that is the message behind this slide. How do you do a lockdown drill with your students with COVID protocols in place? How does like a fire drill where you evacuate out, what does that look like? So really rethinking a lot of these things that the staff encounters and being ready and making sure that your team is ready. Did you have anything to add to that, Melissa?
No, I think that's
okay.
I think that's great.
And then we want to encourage you guys to advocate. How can you get involved? I will tell you the California After School Network, which is where Melissa works, is one of my biggest resources to be able to call the California After School Network and say, hey, I'm trying to do this. They always have a resource for me. The National After School Association is something I would encourage you to sign up and get some information from. They also advocate for us on the federal level. And if you get on their listserv, both CAN and NAA, the National After School Association, let us know when we need to be advocating to the state and when we need to advocate to the federal government for what we need. And then we had here additional considerations. We didn't really get to talk about sports. Both of us run elementary programs, and so I should say, I run elementary and junior high. Our sports program is more fun for all based, and it's not as competitive as high school sports, but that is something to think about in the realm of your after school programs. We are going to skip this breakout, and we wanted to provide an opportunity for you guys to unmute, ask questions, or share some thoughts that you're having. And we'll spend a few minutes with you on that. We have, before we get there, we've shared the slide deck with everybody. We've touched base on pretty much everything we said we would at the beginning. You can follow CAN, as I was just saying, as well as a few other organizations. And then our contact information, if you'd like to reach out to us, is on the last slide. Slide 32. I work for Oxnard School District. Melissa works for the California After School Network. So we are here to answer questions for you and to open up a discussion. I see some chats have gone in there. Perfect. So what are your guys' thoughts? Is there something maybe we didn't talk about?
Maybe we can stop sharing so we can see everyone.
Absolutely.
I just want to say thank you for all the information. This was brilliant, really brilliant for me, especially because I have been away from my school setting, and the principals welcomed me back, and I had no idea what I'm in store for. So this was very, very helpful.
Well, thank you very much. It was
Thank
nice
you.
that you were able to be here. JJ, I heard you talking. You had a lot of stuff going on in your program. What are your thoughts about everything?
Hi.
Hi.
I talk a lot. So yeah, I'm super excited from our breakout rooms. I've been doing in person since last summer, and providing technical assistance to Region 4 specifically around in person, which is a weird job. COVID consultant. And I'm really grateful for your slide deck. And it was really great connecting with the other districts that we don't get a chance to talk to a lot.
I think networking is huge. If you didn't get a chance to exchange information, maybe, if you guys want to connect with each other. I know you can do it through the app for the conference, if I'm not mistaken. And
yes.
You can swap it here. Matt, you and I need to be on an advocacy team somewhere together. I said amen to everything you put in the chat.
Thank you. I mean, this was very helpful for rethinking when we return with everybody else, because every time a rule comes up, I look at my staff and I go, would your people actually do that? And they go, no. And I go, okay, then what are we going to do, right? So this is very helpful to think about how to incorporate that and how to work with the school team. And, big shout out to all our custodians.
Yes.
I appreciate you emphasizing that repeatedly. They are,
we found that the kids are great. They want to be back at school and they're willing to do everything they need to be back at school. And I've used the word anxiety, and Melissa knows that that's code, because I could write a book. You wouldn't believe this business with the stuff that's happened and how people's anxiety has caused them to respond in a very antagonistic manner. Is that and our staff is just trying to be there to support the needs of kids just like everybody else. Yeah.
It's been tough.
Well, anybody else have questions, thoughts, ideas?
I think one of the things that's super important, especially those of us who have been working in these populations, and I know I cannot count on my fingers how many trauma-informed professional developments I've gone to over the past 2+ decades, and working with populations who have experienced trauma, and kids and families and whole child and wraparound. And this time, this one is the first time when we're in it with them. And I think that's an important thing to remember, is that I'm not the trauma-informed provider who's right. And it's the same trauma. It's not like, oh, I've got my own childhood trauma, right? That we're all in it. And that's a first time for me in 25 years working with youth. And I think that's an important thing to remember. And it allows us to give ourselves grace, as well as others. And being super verbal, it's one thing to know it. And then my bachelor's, back before I was ever anything, was in marketing. And it's that having to say it out loud and be explicit to myself and to others all the time. It's a mantra. But we're going to be okay. And I'll tell you what, the first time, I didn't realize it, the first time when I got back on a campus and I was stressed, and COVID and food and disinfectant and disease, and I stopped and I shut my eyes and I heard that red bouncy ball playing Foursquare, and I heard that plastic jump rope with the 2 color things, the little, and I heard it hitting, and I heard some kid like screaming like, catch me, or something like that. And I shut my eyes and I just had tears. Wow. And I wanted to make it a ringtone because I had been without that sound for too long. And I took it for granted every time I walked from my car or walked to my car.
Wow.
And that moment where I had those sounds have kept me going. So let's get them back on campus.
Absolutely.
That was awesome. Thank you, JJ.
Yeah.
The power of the pause can sometimes open up our heart to things that we just know we need, but get mixed in all the funk. Yeah.
And
well, thank you, everyone. No, not the microphone.
That's the good funk.
Yes, that's the good funk. Well, thank you everyone for attending. Are there any other final questions, comments? I think we have lunch, and I hope everyone continues to stay for the rest of the convening. We have a lunch panel that you do not want to miss, and then also a closing panel of superintendents that have a really strong closing message. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you so much.
And Matt, there's a staff session in the afternoon, Matt. So go to that staffing session in the afternoon. And Araceli, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. What were you about to
I
say?
would say thank you for all the information you provided this morning. It's great information. And I will go to the other district sites and pull their handbook. And I wish everybody the best as we start planning and we roll out this new fiscal year. And we'll see how it goes.
Awesome. Well, good luck, everybody. Have a fabulous day. Keep making change in the lives of the kids you serve. So thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Be well.